Dobrý večer. Welcome everyone. Tá fáilte brith agus go míle maithagibh as teachtchuig an ócáid speisial tá seo. I am absolutely delighted to welcome you all here and to be able to introduce our very special guest tonight, Ailbhe Ní Ghearbhuigh, who is one of the most distinguished and influential poets, contemporary Irish language poets, and also a respected scholar and literary critic. Ailbhe is the author of 3 poetry collections, the most recent one being Fantastic agus Donta Ele, Hot Wave and Other Poems, published last year, and a bilingual selection from 2016 entitled The Coast Road, and featuring translations into English by 13 prominent Irish poets, including Alan Gillis, Ailbhe Ní Ghearbhuigh, Justin Quinn, Paul Muldoon and others. And only very few poets before Ailbhe would have been honoured with this kind of attention, wide-ranging attention from their peers. Apart from English and Czech, of course, her poems would have been translated into many other languages, including German, French, Italian, Spanish, and Galician. Her poem, File Eran Gahir, Back to the City, which you are going to hear her read tonight, was chosen for Ireland's EU presidency in 2013. And 4 years later, the eminent Irish language poet, Nolan O'Connell, chose Ní Ghearbhuigh as the next holder of Parnell's walking stick, a symbolic Irish literary baton which Ní O'Connell herself had received from Seamus Heaney in 1998, and which Ailbhe now has in her keep, and it's hanging over the fireplace in her living room. Or sorry, last night over dinner. So we are extremely honoured to be hosting Ailbhe Ní Ghearbhuigh tonight and in Prague, and we are very grateful to the Department of Foreign Affairs Ireland and the Irish Embassy in Prague for their long-term and generous support. Ailbhe's visit has also been made possible by support from the European Federation of Associations and Centres of Irish Studies and its Irish Itinerary programme. Ailbhe Ní Ghearbhuigh has been hailed as, or for her capacity to celebrate the richness of the Gaelic literary tradition and modern poetry in Irish and English without ever succumbing to the burden of that multifaceted legacy. David Wheatley highlights Ní Ghearbhuigh's special, and I quote, trick of making Irish-speaking Ireland appear metropolitan, even decadent. And she has achieved this by way of combining representations of vernacular stories and life, including the uneasy status of the Irish language and its speakers, with reflections on other landscapes, cities, cultures, and languages. Indeed, in many of her poems, she considers the fate of other small minoritized, often already deceased languages, and one example would be Jerry na Fredde, Last Glass, dedicated to the whistling language of the Pyrenean shepherds, and one of the poems you are going to hear to read, Ailbhe read tonight, is about that. Another example would be Druma and Congo, which commemorates the now disappeared idiom of the Congolese talking drum. In these poems, Ní Ghearbhuigh displays, and I quote again, an affinity of the clandestine character of minority languages, end quote. And by the same token, she has also managed to confirm to herself and to us, her readers, the relatively secure position of Irish on the map of small or endangered languages in the world. Yet, while this internationalist cosmopolitan aspect is one of the prominent features in Ní Ghearbhuigh's writing, there are other equally important strains and themes to be found in her poems. I, for one, consider Ailbhe to be a genuine master of the love poem. Her honest considerations of relationships will often take you on a roller coaster ride of emotions. And the one thing you can be sure of is that no plateau of romantic feeling filtered through convention will be reached. For whenever you find yourself immersed in a moment of elated communion and sublime beauty, you can be sure that discord and difference are lurking around the corner. Throw in a bit of witchcraft, maybe a curse or two, and a wonderfully woven net of allusions, and there you have your typical Ní Ghearbhuigh love song, be it addressed to a spouse and lover, a child or friend, a city or a tree. Ailbhe's reading tonight will be predominantly in Irish. She will read the English translations of some of the poems, and the reading will be accompanied by Czech translations, and I've been very fortunate to have been joined by two dear colleagues, Světlík and Adéla Černá, in providing the translations for tonight. For those of you who need handouts with the English translations, we have provided them, so we would ask you to share them. There are not that many. Thank you again for coming in such great numbers. That's great to see. Some of the poems, and more by Ailbhe and other Irish language poets, and also poets writing in Scottish Gaelic, have been published in the latest issue of Blood, and the issue will be available for purchase after the reading, so make sure you get your copy before you leave tonight. And is that true that you have a few copies of The Coast? Yes. Ailbhe has been so kind to bring with her in her suitcase a few copies of the bilingual selection, The Coast Road, and she has saved some for us, even though I'm sure that in Bratislava, which was the first stop over for her on the Irish Itinerary tour, they were eager to rid her of all the copies. So also, if you are interested in getting one, grabbing one for yourself, dash for it after the reading. I could and I would love to speak about Ailbhe's poetry for the rest of the night, but it's much better for the poems and the poet to be heard. So please join me now in welcoming our distinguished guest, Ailbhe Ní Ghearbhuigh. Tá fáilte rud, Ailbhe, agus the floor is yours.
It's wonderful to be here, and thank you very much to Daniela and for everyone involved in getting me over. I should be in Cork teaching this week. It's very decadent to be here talking poetry. So I'm going to begin with an old poem, and I wrote this when I was working in Bordeaux as a lectrice. I'm someone who really engaged with the EU project. You know, I loved Erasmus, it changed my life. I think I actually claim regularly that the Irish language has an awful lot of empathy with Europe, or certainly bilingual speakers in Ireland would have an awful lot of compassion with various different languages and communities, such as the Galicians and the Catalan and the Basque, and I suppose we're just aware that we're all in it together, you know. In France, when I lived in France, I was on my early 20s, and a lot of the poetry that we had studied at university, though not all of it, was very much to do with rural life. And there's a very famous poem by Mortino de Rohan called Fuishiv a Yodsa, or Respite I Will Find, and it's about how he feels when he returns to his native island off the coast of Galway. And I suppose I was trying to stake a claim that not everyone needs to feel like that, and that there are other legitimate ways of feeling about a city that involve that frisson of excitement, and I certainly felt that in Bordeaux, and then later on in New York and other places. So, legge me an Ghaile dus fille an gahar, and then I'll read Justin Quinn's translation. Anoch deg fille dom, blasham alles na carloch farm. Das lom na tashacht. Praben an aimsir láthirach ó gan ara ógach balle im rohel an tramulne. A da vín gomusglíon gás sketamini onum. Is fear nach gítar línig réine varsing a spéide. Kaken an ihe idir furignav orde gan rau. Ach lasan síl sin cuini cwfíocha mo chrí. Fuishiv a jodsa mo chríanán galí Machluas la Hauran Trochta. And for those of you interested in translation, Justin did something very clever in his version. So instead of translating Mortino Duran's line, Fuisha the Yodsa, he opted for Yeats and Peace Comes Dropping Slow. So keep an ear out for that. Back to the city. Tonight I'm coming back. I taste the city sweat around me, and it tastes good. The whole thing's present tense, and heat throbs from its walls in the late afternoon. I will admit that I'm high on what the city heaves out of itself. It's true there's not the slightest glimpse of sundown in this wide sky. The night dives low between tall buildings without warning. But neon signs light up the strangest corners of my heart, and peace comes dropping slow on the moonlit window ledge, my ear lulled to traffic's song. Oh yeah, of course.
Návrat do města. Při návratu dnes kolem sebe cítím pot města. Ta vlhkost se mi nepříčí. Čas přítomný se bezstarostně odráží od stěn v odpoledním žáru. Přiznávám, že ve mně z plodiny plodí nadšení. Pravda, neuvidíš tu slunce zapadat nad širokým obzorem. Noc se rozkydne mezi věžáky bez varování. Záře neonů však svítí do skrytých koutů mého srdce. Klid ten já naleznu. V noci doma, na balkóně, kde v uších zní mi hudba města.
Thank you so much. It's such a thrill to hear it in Czech. So as Daniela mentioned, I spent a number of years searching for unusual languages and modes of expression, and in some way I suppose I was trying to write about the Irish language without referring to it directly, and this is the whistling language that used to exist among shepherds and others who lived in the Pyrenees. I'll read the English first this time. It's translated by Billy Ramsell as Last Blast. Even now the people of Ask can remember the long ago whistling language of shepherds, whistles that followed the acoustic echoey channel from village to pasture, whistles that carried the day's tittle-tattle between herdsmen and the women of the homesteads, whistles not understood beyond the limits of their parish. When the Nazis invaded, the whistling tongue kept Jews from coming to harm. It passed resistance messages secretly from lip to pursed lip and helped crashed Allied pilots reach the border with Spain. It hasn't been heard since. It has a half-life, this whistling language, in the memories of certain parishioners, but none now is capable of producing the sounds. It was never recorded. Dere na fede. Inniuh hain is clean le muinted as gymich tanga o fadí agus na hirí fadó fad de rav balach fuime an glanne idir féidech is shroud valje Fad a dúmpar nuacht an lei, idir iarrí agus na mná a dibrig snugurt má gúrd. Fadí nach dictaí na smó an baróiste. Nuair a tháinig na natsathe chiimeád an gheadaíl dúdig sláán ó chun túirt. Chur scéalte an resistance ó bhéal go béal fearún. Chaurig le cialótaí bhíimethe amú, teorann na Spáine a raibh siú. Níor chulathas ó hinní. Marann si a glíne na níne an teanga fadéilesa, ach ní lear chumas éine na fuimine a athris. Níor duineadh é an tafad.
U konce s dechem. Ještě dnes se lidé z Asu pamatují na jazyk, kterým hvízdali ovčáci kdysi dávno. Hvizd, který se ozvěnou nes údolím mezi pastvinou a vesnicí. Hvizd, který nosil denně zprávy ovčákům i ženám, které pracovaly nedaleko na polích. Hvízdání, které zahumny už neznali. Když přitáhli nacisté, hvízdání chránilo Židy před nebezpečím. Přenášelo od úst k ústům tajně zprávy o odboji a navádělo sestřelené piloty ke španělským hranicím. Od té doby mlčí. Ještě snad v paměti lidí přežívá tenhle jazyk hvízdání, nikdo už ale neví, jak těm zvukům vdechnout život. Nejsou žádné záznamy.
I think most Irish language writers at some stage address the why. And this is a poem that I wrote many years ago in New York, kind of tongue-in-cheek a little bit, thinking about the future of the language and how ultimately powerless any one individual is. And it's called Leithanthe Lagvishnig. So we'll just hear this in Irish and in Czech. Leithanthe Lagvishnig. A da bhín chur lá, bíam tréachta dá cosint os córa tail. Bíam breim de bheith fréamhathe, cuis leapan na tangan éignithe sa. Gaí beseachirthe, á fara go cuaramach. Ag impi bathe inti ríist. Is nuair cín na canáb a lofa ag cailciú. Tigam ná ag fáca lá éigint, ach smúit bhalamh. Achan irid nam hénig.
Na dně. Občas mě, přiznám se, nebaví bránit ji věčně před světem. Nechci už celé dny dřepět u smrtelné postele tolikrát pohřbeného jazyka a upínat se k naději, nespouštět z ní oči a počítat záchvěvy života. Když ale vidím, jak rychle vápenatí ty staré křehké kosti, nezbývá mi, než si připustit, že jednoho dne z ní bude jen hromádka němého prachu, zrovna tak němého jako já.
Sometimes a poem arrives in a dream. Those ones are really easy to write. This is a poem about called Díseartach, about a hermit who I visited allegedly in the depths of County Mayo. There's another Martin O'Doran reference here actually, for those of you who are into Martin O'Doran. Díseartach. Tá díseartach ar methane a gúnta bhaio, a lár foríse nach ól daon bheo. Thug sé cúil leis an gceol fadó ar san siosar nach réig do bhain seog. Tugam bheith nara é a gcuim na híche, ag míornáil fánn go ciúin síthach. Marann sé ar chanóanna is cuire, an cawl a hamdaíonn sé thar éal ní eile. Téal na tríoteir nuair a thuirsin de laparacht is de chrúbáil an tail. Bí a do chrán a chóirle dom is cuirim costa dacha. Sínam a lábha os ma hiún is mé ag fara ar an nuin. Laurí mar rís le ma díseartach an nuin a cheasan na nacadom in a bheith chlúbach
Poustevník. Znám poustevníka v hrabství Mayo, uprostřed lesa, lidem neznámého. Ten hudbu vyměnil, už je to dávno, za hebký šum ševelivých jasanů. Uprostřed noci slýchávám, jak tiše brouchá si, jak libozvučně. Živí se ořechy a bobulemi a nejvíc baždí po lískovém keři. Chodívám za ním, když jsem unavená, životem zmožená a upachtěná. Buď stromem, radí mi. Pevně se rozkročím, pozdvihnu ruce nad hlavu a čekám na příhodnou chvíli. Zas mluvím s milovaným poustevníkem, který tu stojí vedle mě, pířitý jak bříza.
Winter is coming, so I'm going to read a poem called Wintering, Ghearbhuigh, and Billy Ramsell did this translation. I caught a stomach sorrow while traipsing October's fogs. I ate to nourish it, made a cocoon for it, laid it with slow reverence in a hollow. For 14 nights some cursed sleep's been after me, while I've been up feeding on darkness. Don't say a word, don't look in my direction, there's something on my heart that can't be lifted. I give in to wintering. You won't see me till the buds begin to blossom. Ghearbhuigh. Bullock vrown the hulagus, phone I go gionod, chahia say le bia, the yinisto cocoon is the lagistach a bluish gohul. Tasuin malachach ag bagarturum le caicish, is me ag alpa dorachadish. Na laur fochel, na fiach impreo, ha diffin machri nach na gopher. Gaelum dan Ghearbhuigh. Ní a hanó for me, go piaca na machlóg.
Zimování. Tíseň na duši jsem notně přikrmila procházkou říjnovou mlhou a v zámutku ji co nejpokorněji uložila do těsné prohlubně. Po 14 dlouhých nocí mě pronásledoval zlý sen a já zatím hltala tmu. Nic neříkej, nedívej se sem. Na srdci mám černočerný stín. Nemohu jinak, musím už spát. Uvidíš mě zas, až vyraší první pupeny.
This is quite a personal poem that I wrote around the time my mother was knocked down by a car and required some assistance at home. And at the same time, she's a big fan of these 24-hour news channels, and we were watching the Taliban reaching Kabul, and there was this combination of the country and certainly the capital bracing itself for the arrival of the Taliban. And I was thinking about the impact that would have on people's lives and certainly on women's lives, and also the impact of a car hitting a body. So it's called Faraga. I guess it'll only be in Irish, in Canada. Tá ag lana ma bháthar go cuaireamach, le hiisce subal is iadach. Tá cabal ag déanamh an gcathair, dúmhórsa ag ddridum le Kabul. Na helicopter hanahéin ag tuairlicht, tá ag lana ma bháthar go cuaireamach, ag cuimilt go séimh na mal brúite, an cricin bog a dúach. Dúmhórsa ag ddridum le Kabul, ag scuaba leis mianta is tuil. Tuairthid féin a dream le dúthracht, trimóid í le cáréis, ag cuineamh gan stad impact, an teanna in ag fórsa nirt. Is mé glana ma bháthar go cuaireamach, dúmhórsa ag ddridum le Kabul.
koupel. Umývám pečlivě svou matku, k ruce mám plátno, mýdlo, vodu. K městu doléhá dunění, Tálibán se vrací do Kábulu. Nad hlavou příklepy vrtulníků umývám pečlivě svou matku. Pozorně otírám zhmožděné paže, průsvitnou kůži plnou modřin. Tálibán se vrací do Kábulu, s ním život a naděje, prý snad. Pouštím se oddaně do jejich zad, potom ji důkladně osuším a myslím přitom na důsledky vlády teroru i odporu proti němu. Umývám pečlivě svou matku a Tálibán se vrací do Kábulu.
I should mention that Daniela actually wrote the introduction to this book, my last poetry collection, and she did an absolute wonderful job. So Ghearbhuigh got the reach that station in the end of them. People are astounded by you all here in Prague and what you've achieved. Honestly, I was just in Bratislava bragging about you actually. But I suppose it's important to acknowledge, that I suppose between Irish studies and the Irish language, and indeed Scots Gaelic, that there is it's a very dynamic environment. I'm going to read a poem, one of the first poems I wrote after the birth of my first daughter and the ensuing identity crisis that followed it. And this is set in, I'm not sure if you have such coffee mornings in Czech Republic. Where basically you go with your newborn and you meet loads of strangers. It's as nightmarish as that sounds. It's bizarre. But in some ways, I found them really useful. But I also had to write a really nightmarish poem about the experience. So this is called Crow. And it's translated by Billy Ramsell as byre, which is where cows go to be milked. We measure her, measuring, will she get in? Will her carriage pass through the doorframe? We've seen this kind of thing before, uncertainty at the threshold, but no need for her between two worlds to hesitate. She'll be swallowed anyway into this kingdom of heat. There's a scatter of us here already, salmon-eyed and sweating. The coffee in our coffee pots sweet and ineffectual. A few of us monitor the clock on the wall, but most wouldn't give you spilt milk for the hour, stationed here between drowsiness and roaring, the hunger sucking at us, brain and brain, the marrow slurped out of each bone. Oh, how this cursed acoustic titillates and stabs, the whispering and the shrieks and the jibber-jabber. And still she cogitates athwart the door frame. But the only way out for her is to come in. Crow. Ciamí diag pós an raishi isteach, maid na trocale trí rama an doris. Chonaic mar le héad ribisha, gintach der a dorseach, ach ní gáde le idir gá chórle. Slug farí a rémos isteach a riocht seo an tasa, tá scata gwyn an so hanna, súile éisgorin is sin na cur alish, tá café sa fota lag agus bog, tá draw meg farag o géir an glog, forvór a gwyn biog biawn an úr, just ag marachtan seo nail go búr, an tucker sa dúlarin le fada le stóir, an smud suite as gach cnáv, gló damant an a háte sa agréalba, coganí is giabarachtis gdécha. Tá sí fós an dárseach ag fada isteach, ach ní leantan siirice na éan tacht as.
I think here a few words on the way I translated the title are due. Crow, the original title of the poem, the word means many different things. it can refer to the place where cows are milked. It can also refer to a place where hens are kept. And it can also refer to an eye or a needle, a very narrow, constricted space. And since Doirna doesn't really, I decided to go for hens in the title, just to convey the impression, the sense of a very compressed space. Klecová. Tak schválně říkáme si, jestli se s kočárem trefí do dveří. My všechny jsme tím prošli. I my jsme váhali na prahu místnosti a víme, že jakkoliv se zdráhá, horko ji nakonec pohltí. I bez ní je tu plno. Dusno napadnutí, poulíme oči, stíráme pod z čela, káva v konvici je vlažná a bez chuti. Těkáme zrakem k hodinám, přestože většina z nás nemá pojem o čase, jenom se zoufale upíná k vidině spánku. Jak dlouho už vysáté do morku kostí držíme při životě hlad. Dala bych nevím co za chvilku ticha, rve mi to tu uši, kdo netlachá, ten šeptá nebo ječí. Ona dosud otálí mezi dveřmi, jako by měla na vybranou, jako by odsud bylo návratu.
This next poem is called Díle, and it's an Ailbhe about only being Irish. And I think maybe following on from Crow, that last poem, is the feeling that the water levels are rising. They are. And they're rising physically, and they were certainly rising, in my mind, for a time. Díle. Sáiríonn isce an ile ní, idir táirseach agus díon. Níl bach, ná tóra, ná bín, nach naim síonn sé slí tríd. Téaltaíonn isteach dús, an bréan malathe nuas, na fallaí ag bogad inis le thualach an luchris. Gal maidne a bhanóg, an téir á ásca ag brú, tá gial na fanóige ina ghardín masrúin. Tá tusa chuas a teomra ag cuma corach as focail. Táim sé hias san íoslach ag muoine snáb dar muir.
Záplava. Voda všechno zaplavuje, od zápraží až po střechu. Není zábrany ani meze, přes něž by nenašla cestu. Nejprve dovnitř zatéká proklatý čůrek zhora. Pod náporem vlhka se stěny drolí. Ráno na okně rosa. Vzduch nasáklý vodou, z okenního rámu raší houbová líheň. Zatímco ty se držíš nad vodou a skládáš si v pokoji ze slov kánoji, já se tu dole mořím a učím děti plavat.
One more, actually two more. Two more child ones, by Derelyn and Shin. My second daughter is a wheezy daughter. It's awful. I suppose there's many nights where you'd be trying to keep her upright to try and facilitate the breathing. And then recently, in the last 2 years, I'd say it's a matter of saying, okay, now she's bad enough. We have to take her in. It's just, right, the nature of asthma, and it can come quite quickly. So one night, she was very young at this stage, and I imagined in the wheeze that I heard seagulls. So I'm going to read this in Irish only. But I'm sure you get the sense of it, the idea of seagulls squawking on the breath and so forth. Tá fuileáin den náin, ní chodaló den nacht, is an cór scarúach is stéige de chléomhrach. Tá tú im bhaclinn chud díreach le fáil is mise ar a malach. Den mairán ní dhéilhead ná de chrécha na matán, má scuagach is town. Tá an narig is suite, tá fuiláin den náil, leis an cáithe na dain.
Ve tvém dechu radci. Dnes v noci oka nezamhouřím. Ve tvém hrudníčku skřehotá ptačí chór. Vzpíráš se v mé náruči jako stromý útes. Stěží se držím na špičce. Třesu se únavou, nepoddám se však. Malátná, ale odhodlaná. Moře vše pozře. Ve tvém dechu radci. Cítím mořskou pěnu na jazyku.
This is the last poem. So for me, the Mahagab Galer's Fahan So, agus for me, Mahagab Le EFACIS, agus leis Namsa Ganerin, and so, I Prague, agus, Gachtine, a Chaurig, agus Radban, agus Daniela Theinová, a Bicho Fiel, agus Cho Knastalum. This poem is about how much children have to teach the parents, and I think Karl Marx said something along those lines. And it's true, you know, they teach you a lot. This is called Morning Sun, or Grian na Maidne. Moindam de Rúbrach, de Hollis Play Niavrach, time olive, time ool. Bedem Frentíiseach Ciacrach Amon an Ghanú. Táach rí chod lan leis an spéir, is cho fial flahúil. Raide da hí cho réir, nach dúldam ó hús, a cho frital na machló go gom an dlúas. Tucad isteach gramadach na cnachtain, a glúisin mar haun orge nuair a héidir gae cháte. Tá tanga na gile go líofa ag man lenabáin sa bhaile, agus is feinach an tuide í. Tá búda tannaí ag bun an ghardín a bhahan dome nuair a hitam in omar an é dulchais. A chairíon an chríon a ríist maidin, agus a réimse a ríist, olive agus ual.
Pranní slunce. Nauč mě svému zápalu, světlo jasné, oslnivé. Jsem pokorná, jsem přičinlivá. S horlivostí učedníka se vrhnu do díla. Srdce mám čisté jako nebe a stejně tak velkorysé. Zvyknu si na syntax, ač mi zprvu není vlastní, ale pupenům těm porozumím hned. Přijdu na kloub gramatice pšenice, která se zvánkem vzdouvá jako zlatistá vlna. Doma mě dcerka trpělivě učí zářivému jazyku, jímž sama plyně mluví. V koutě zahrady sedí vychrtlý Buddha, co mi vždy odpustí, když propadám v zoufalství. Zítra však slunce vstane znova a já znovu vstanu s ním, pokorná a přečidlivá.